Okay, so last Saturday, we were supposed to have a washing machine delivered to the Abbey. And they called at 8 o'clock in the morning and said that they'd be there within half an hour. So I was outside standing around waiting for them. And the teachings had started. And all of a sudden I hear the truck down at Tara's backing up. Beep, beep, beep. I said, okay, they're down there. They'll be up here really shortly. They never came up. Okay, so they went down to Tara's, they saw the mailboxes, they looked at the signs, and they turned around and went away. So I went down there to look and see if they were actually still there, and they weren't. But they had left this nifty little sign. They stopped by. So they didn't know where we were, but they knew where 292 was. But I looked at the house, and there was no numbers on the house for them to recognize which one was which. So I immediately called and made another appointment to have the washing machine delivered on Monday. And then I went to the hardware store and got a couple of numbers to put on the cars. And it looks like this. Now, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it got 292, you know. And then I looked back at them and I said, okay, they're not quite even, not quite straight, they're not quite centered. But you know what? It doesn't matter because it gets the job done. Now, I'm not talking about the 9 that's up in the middle because I did that on purpose, make it, give it character, make it stand out and everything. But, the numbers are not what I'd like, They're not even. There's different spacings between the twos and they're kind of, But we don't treat everybody evenly either. If we remember ethical conduct when we're working for and with others, then we become more like the Bodhisattva ideals that we're trying to become. All you have to do is look at the Congress and how they treat each other to see how bad can be. And all you have to do, and look at Taiwan and China, or North Korea and the rest of the world. The Dharma teaches us that all sentient beings have been our parents in previous lives. But that's not how we look at them now. We give each one a different label. And depending on what label we give them is how we treat them. But all sentient beings have a right from us for compassion, loving kindness, and respect. And those labels are going to change. Change is part of nature. That's a part of our lives. Now, I could have gotten angry at those delivery people, but when they actually showed up, they were really kind people. They were professional, and they wore masks, which I really appreciated. And I could have gotten mad at that Saturday, but that would not have helped me or the person I was talking to when we set up the next appointment. So no matter what the Dharma teaches, all sentient beings have been my parent in a former life, and they don't deserve my enmity. We're all equal. We're on an even level, deserving of respect and kindness. But because I'm not even close to awakening, I haven't quite got the hang of it yet. But as long as I'm moving forward, making all sentient beings of equal importance to me, then that's going to have to be good enough. So back to the numbers. If you look closely, the 2s and the 9, they're not level. They're not quite straight. They're just a little out of whack. Cattywampus, you might say. Just like we are when we're trying to meditate. And our minds go wonky, and we get out of alignment. So I'm going to use the environment as an example of this. It's definitely out of alignment. We keep doing negative things, and it gets damaged, just like our lives. We keep doing negative things, keep thinking negative thoughts, creating negative karma, and we wonder why we suffer so much. The only way to fix it is to concentrate on doing positive actions, having positive thoughts. And then we can begin to fix our world and at the same time work on our minds. Now this begins with renunciation. And what are we renouncing? We're renouncing the suffering and attachment that keeps us in samsara. Now our instincts tell us to take everything that we believe will help us live our lives happier. This includes all the natural resources that the earth provides. But when we take without thinking or giving back, we harm ourselves, other sentient beings, and the earth. But our parents hopefully taught us how to share. Making sound ecological choices is sharing, and one way to engage in renunciation. Using only our fair share and leaving the rest for the others and not harming the environment so that it will be available in the future and be a benefit of all, for everybody. And that's renunciation also. When we share the Dharma, that's the best gift that we can give anybody. Dharma is a positive force in the world. It teaches the best way to play with it well with others. Generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous. Those are just to name a few. And you know, it looks like most of the leaders in the world could use a lot of practice in this. Practicing the Dharma means training to train our mind. But until we have enough concentration to keep our mind on what we truly want and what we want to achieve, we're going to keep right on harming others and ourselves and our planet. Right now, we have an attachment to our body and our friends and our lives. But we really want to be out of samsara. But if we really want to be out of samsara, we have to give up this attachment to this mind or to this life and its perceived pleasures and work towards renunciation. That takes mind training, concentration, keeping our mind focused or straight to what we're trying to accomplish, and keeping our practice in mind at all times. Now, I'm definitely not there yet. But since I'm still practicing and working at it, for now, it's got to be good enough. And numbers again. If you see, they're not centered. You know, sorry. But you know what? Neither are we. I think we all want to be centered or balanced in our lives. We haven't quite got the knack of seeing reality as it is, and that's how we're going to get centered. That's where we need to look to be balanced and centered. And look at the pandemic that's ravaging this entire planet. There are various vaccines that can stop the pandemic, but there are way too many people who refuse it. There are people out there that are having kids and they're dying and they're leaving these kids alone. Little kids, even newborns. And you know what? That's just messed. This is ignorance. Yeah, that's just ignorance showing through. When we have the Dharma to help us be free of samsara and attachment and anger, but we don't put it to practice all the time, this is ignorance. This is what we deal with all the time when we don't practice the Dharma. People are dying for no good reasons, and that's just such a waste. There's already enough ways for us to die. We don't need to be helping death along. We have to maintain our focus, be balanced, centered, and remember that it doesn't really matter because nothing inherently exists. We're creating our own suffering for no reason except that our ignorance keeps us in samsara. We have the wisdom of the Dharma, but only by practicing it, using it every moment of every day so that it becomes our nature. Only then, when we have learned to do this, will we become a bodhisattva and be well on our way to becoming a Buddha. Now, all sentient beings have life. You know, some have human life. How many beings are actually taking this opportunity? I always like the story of the great big blind giant turtle in the middle of a water world that once every 100 years comes up, and maybe very, 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 very few times, every once in a while, he pokes his head through a golden yolk that's floating on the water. So what are the odds? Not very good. But that's the odds of having a human life, much less a precious human life. But the most fortunate ones of us, right now, we have a precious human life. So this time we made it. Well, what are we doing with it? Well, we're listening to teachings. That's good. Hopefully training our mind, practicing the Dharma, all in an effort to rid ourselves and others of pain and suffering and any other negative state that sentient beings may find ourselves in. This then is where we're at. Not quite even, not quite straight, not quite centered. But for now, it's going to have to be good enough. And that's okay, because eventually, as long as we keep practicing the way the Buddha taught us, we'll get the job done. And we'll become awakened for the benefit of all sentient beings.